the Unspoken Truth channel?
We are indeed streaming. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Unspoken Truth. Ed had a question there as we were going live. We're live across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different platforms at the moment. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, Ed?
I'm living the dream. Yeah. I was checking because I pull up the other sites that we stream on, and I haven't told you this before, but I have like a competition in my head going on between the Hey Ed YouTube channel. I'm trying to get more viewers on my channel there than on the Unspoken Truth channel.
I see us on the Hey Ed channel, the Robert Bruss official channel, and the Unspoken Truth YouTube channel there, and I see we're streaming across all of those. On my personal channel, I see probably 30 to 40 views per day there, and I see it across Twitter about the same, and then in Rumble there's a bit going on there as well. So we're starting to get a little bit of traction, and the algorithm's starting to favor us a little bit more, and I noticed the Spotify algorithm's favoring us some more as well. We reached as high as 130 in the Australian podcasting charts, so it's all tracking along really nicely. So
that's because we're not competing anymore with Meghan Markle on Spotify. So
well, that's it. She's gone, so it's all ours. All the celebrity gossip's ours. What do you reckon? Too funny. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here at the Unspoken Truth, welcome. My name's Robert Bruss, and I'm joined by my fabulous co-host Ed Anderson over there in Minnesota. We're live at 5:30 a.m. Sydney time, 2:30 p.m. Minnesota time every single weekday. We're also available as a podcast, as I mentioned, over on your favorite podcasting app, video podcast on Spotify, and audio at all the other places. So pop open your favorite app there where you get your audio content, and you can get a copy of the Unspoken Truth if you can't join us here live on YouTube every day. So we're also over on Twitter. We're starting to get a bunch of followers there. It's going really well for us, and I'm getting active in that community, and I'm not really in any Twitter fights, and no one's really trolling us or anything like that. But I'm finding that the idea is to get some original content in there, which we've got happening in that part of the internet as well. We're also available over on Telegram, so please come and join us there, and just be careful because there's some R-rated content over in that Telegram channel, but we share a whole bunch of content over there that we simply cannot share on any other platform. So please come and help us build that platform out and share it with your friends and family as well. All right, Ed, let's get straight into today's show because there's a hell of a lot of stuff going on, man. It's really quite unnerving, some of it, and it's like some of the worst possible case scenarios. You might have heard in the news headline that there's a little submersible that goes out to the Titanic. It's done that a couple of times. It's called OceanGate. It's gone missing, and time is almost up for them. I think overnight the time has been up. I'm not quite sure. There's a couple of hours left, but there's an opportunity still to grab those people and help them. But yeah, I think maybe it's time. The time is over. I just want to go through that because anti-submarine warfare is something that is near and dear to my heart, and something that I spent a lot of time doing in the Navy. So I know exactly how they search for submarines and how they do things like this. And I'll show you some really catastrophic mistakes that they'd made in the design of this thing, and how they never really thought about anything that potentially would rescue them. So I just want to share that with you. And the way I describe it is it's a really negative, self-fulfilling prophecy. It's kind of like, what did you think was going to happen? And there's a little bit of arrogance in there as well that has caused this. So I just want to go through that and give you the unspoken truth of what's actually going on behind the headlines, because it's an absolute tragedy, but it was completely and totally avoidable. And I'll make a couple of statements for you, and I'll show you how it was completely and totally avoidable. All right, and Ed's got a little report for us on the ongoing dance between interest rates and inflation, and that is something that is really biting hard here in Australia. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We've had 11 consecutive interest rate rises, and on the first Tuesday of every month, we figure out if we're going to have another one, and I suspect we're going to have another one in about a week or so's time, which might be a tipping point for many Australians with a mortgage. It's not anything like you experienced when you bought your first house at 17 and 18%, buying a bloody house on a credit card. That wasn't very smart. But here we are at the precipice and looking over at the abyss there to another housing crisis. The Australian housing market is akin to a Ponzi scheme, I'm telling you. And if you're positioned correctly, you might be able to dive in and scoop up some opportunities and some bargains in the process. What do you think, Ed?
Well, yeah, it's but that's a pretty deep topic. But yeah, the housing industry, in my opinion, people buying a house right now, what the heck are you thinking? Listen, this is just one man's opinion. Okay, I personally do think that in the next year or two, you're going to get a really good buying opportunity, just like we had in the 2009 2011 period. I think another event like that is going to come, and I'll touch upon why in my presentation a little bit later on. But yeah, but listen, if young people, you got to feel bad for the young people out there who are priced out of this housing market. They can't afford to get these houses. They're just starting out in life. And that's the real tragedy. Meanwhile, you got the BlackRocks of the world who are taking full advantage of this.
Well, it's I think what you're going to do is you got to look at these things with perspective, right? I feel sorry for young people that can't get into the market, but if you just check fire on that for another 12 or 18 months, you'll be able to get in and you'll get a bargain basement deal, and you're not going to get carved up and whipsawed by the bloody interest rates or the prices going up and down. The whole thing is going to come down like a house of cards, and you're going to be able to swoop in and get your deal, and then you're going to be able to maintain that deal as well. It's one thing to get in, but it's another thing altogether to actually be able to maintain that mortgage and keep moving forward and maintain the quality of life that you have as well. I think a lot of people don't take that into account.
The thing is, with every financial market, there's always opportunities if you know the game. All right? Now, and that takes looking beyond the headline, looking beyond, okay, well, that's bad, but how can I benefit from this? There's always a way to benefit from the from the current financial circumstances. And that's what we try to do here. We try to help people, avoid being victims and actually take advantage of, be victorious in this. And we try to show you the little tricks that Wall Street doesn't want you to know, ways that you can actually benefit in bad economic times. There are ways. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, because we give you a lot of really good insight so that, you do not have to be a victim. So anyway.
The way I describe it is we like to go behind the story and give you the unspoken truth, which is another way to say we're giving you the intelligence you need to help you make decisions. But it's not just information. What we're doing is giving you actionable intelligence that you can do something with. So if you hear what Ed's talking about as it relates to finance or markets or charts or something like that, please take that seriously, folks, and please do your own research and figure out if what he's saying is applicable to you. Because I really believe that, we're having these conversations a lot on and off camera, and it's really useful to be able to understand where you sit in relation to all of these things. If you're joining us live here on the show, thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you drop a comment in there? Let us know where you're from. Let us know your thoughts and opinions on today's show, and we love to interact with everybody that's joining us here live on the show as well. And I just want to say thank you for your ongoing support. We've crossed over, I think it's like 260, 270 videos on the channel, something like that. We're nudging up against 300 videos and working really hard to bring you the unspoken truth and lots of content on a daily basis as well. And I'm loving every aspect of it. All right, I want to get into today's show, and I want to talk to you about OceanGate. You might have heard this story going around. I want to take a couple of minutes here to help you understand exactly what's going on, how they're looking for this thing, and why this was a self-fulfilling prophecy. So OceanGate, if you don't know, let me just get rid of this here so you can see the pictures properly. So they go out to the Titanic wreck site, which comes out of Canada. So they leave Canada, Newfoundland there, as you can see on the little chart that I've got, and then they head out and go to that location. So it's a big search area where they are, because there's lots of currents and lots of movement under the water there. So they don't really know. So they know where it went down, of course, where it submerged, but they don't really know where it's gone and how long it's been gone for. What they do know is they lost communications, but there was a series of fail-safes that were in place in the event that the comms went away. So one of the fail-safes that they had on this little submersible was it would report its position, its depth, and its speed every couple of seconds, and it would report back to the surface as well. But all the comms have actually gone away, so no communication. And that had been something that they'd trained for, but the communication piece had gone away for more time, like the time had elapsed. Okay, we haven't heard from a little while. Now we have to action our plan. We've done everything that we can to solve this problem and to move forward. So when you look at what's actually happening, so I'm going to go through with how they actually search for it and what's happened. So the Canadian Air Force has been in there with their P3 Orion. So this is a picture of the P3 on the screen. This is literally 1950s and 1960s technology. So on the bottom of the aircraft here, just where my mouse is, just where the rear part of the wings are, you can see there's like a rectangle there, and there's a series of holes underneath the fuselage there. What that is where they drop sonar buoys. So this is an anti-submarine aircraft. So this is an aircraft that we would use in conjunction with helicopters, ships, and other assets to look for a submarine. And you'll notice in the back of the tail there's this big, long, pointy probe thing in the back of the tail. That's called a MAD, and MAD stands for Magnetic Anomaly Detector. So essentially what we do is we drop the sonar buoys in the water. The sonar buoys make noise. This is what it looks like in the water. So the P3 flies along and drops the sonar buoys in the water like that. And this is what a sonar buoy actually looks like. So this fellow's loading the sonar buoys into a Seahawk. So it can be done from a helicopter or from a special fixed-wing aircraft. In the US Navy, we don't use P3 Orions anymore. I think they're still in service. I can't remember. But they switched that to a 737 version of the same thing. So all the latest gear, updated technology, and I'm sure that those aircraft are on station now as well because they can get there really quickly. So we drop the sonar buoys in the water, and in the tail of the airplane there, you've got the magnetic anomaly detector. Essentially, the sonar buoy is pinging in the water, like you would think of, a submarine movie, like ping, and then it's looking for the sound to reflect back off, and the MAD in the tail of the plane is picking up all of the sounds, and it's really sophisticated sensors. Essentially what we're doing is looking for a metal tube in the water. So there's a couple of design problems that will come up that you will see here while that's making life really difficult for these people searching for them. So they've actually found some noises. So I'm going to play that for you. So you'll need to put your headphones into your ears to hear it because it's a bit faint, but this is the noises that they found. So you can hear the sonar buoy ping, and then you'll hear the tapping. So have a listen again. So it's quite difficult to hear, and when you're trying to do this stuff in real time, I've never had to listen to a headset in an airplane or a helicopter because I'm not an airborne crew, but listening on a warship is hard, right? I always remember just crushing my headphones against my ears trying to hear what's actually going on under the water, and you can hear all sorts of things. There's all sorts of ambient noise there, and you're looking at the sets to see what's going on. And if you've ever been in a doctor's surgery and you've looked at an ultrasound looks a lot like what sonar looks like, because ultrasound is using the liquid in your body so you can see like a baby or an injury or something like that inside of you. And so looking at a set like that looks like ultrasound. And I can remember, you would sit at a sonar and you'd have your hands over your ears and you'd close your eyes and you'd be listening, and then you look up at the console while you're listening to the noises to try and find whatever it is that you're looking for. In this case, this little rover that they've actually designed, there's some really, really serious design flaws that go with it. And the way that I've described this is this was always going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when I heard that this thing had gone missing in the last couple of days, I was like, oh, what is this OceanGate? I thought it was like a piss take of Watergate or something like that, but that's actually what they called it. And so when I looked at this thing, I thought, all right, let's look at some pictures of it. And then I see this is what it looks like. So it's like a minivan. It has just a handful of people that can sit inside of it. So when you look at the actual image here, you see on the front left-hand side there, they've got propulsion that's pointing fore and aft, and then on the upper side of it there, kind of midships on the little machine there, it's got up and down. So it's forward and aft, up and down. That's how it's controlling itself in the water. But what you can't see on the outside of this thing is I can't see any oxygen tanks. I can't see any way, when you go under the water. So think about just being in a confined space. Imagine if you were inside your car And your car is a watertight device and a watertight thing. If you were inside your car and the windows are up and the doors are closed and you turn the heater on and you turn the recycle on so it's not from the outside, pretty quickly the carbon monoxide from your breath inside of there would fill inside of that, and you'd start to feel a little bit woozy. You feel really shit at first. You're like, oh man, I don't feel so well. And then after a while, you kind of get used to it. Now, if you had 4 or 5 people sitting in that same vehicle as you, imagine that. There was 3 people in the back seat, 2 people in the front seat, and you're all breathing there, and you're sitting there for, say, 4 hours in the vehicle. All of a sudden, you start to feel a little bit kind of shit, right? So the people that design this, there's a couple of really serious, massive, serious design faults with this thing. And the first one is, the guy is so arrogant. He's from the aerospace industry. I can't even remember his name. It's not even worth saying his name because he's the cause of all of this. He's the cause of these deaths, which were completely and totally avoidable. Kind of pisses me off when I look at it, because to an untrained eye like myself, what do I know about submarines? I know how to find a submarine and prosecute a submarine with a torpedo, but that's about it. But when I look at this, what I know about being in the Navy and being an anti-submarine operator, I can see the design flaws in this straight away. Like, the first one is the actual device itself is a carbon fiber tube. So it's just a carbon fiber cylinder, the middle of it. And then on the front of it, they have a titanium ring, and you can see that sits over the top of it, with another piece of carbon fiber and a window on the front of it where you're looking out. So when you look at the device, the only way to get in and out, to egress and ingress into this actual submersible, is by opening the hatch on the front of this submarine. And you can see this titanium ring, this thing that goes on the front of it there where the glass is, so people can see what they're looking at as they're actually under the water. So they're going down to look at the Titanic, so they need to be able to see it, of course. So they're looking out the front window there. But you'll notice there's 17 bolts there. So the only way to get in and out of this rover is to have somebody on the outside bolt you in and bolt you out. So the thing is on a hinge where it opens up and it closes, and then they bolt the thing closed. So there's no way for the people on the inside of this submersible to get out of it. That you can get in it, and then somebody closes the hatch, and then they bolt the hatch down like that. So here's unmute yourself here, Ed, and let me know if you remember Apollo number 1. Remember Apollo 1 that blew up on the launch pad? Blew up on the launch pad. It caught fire on the launch pad. So 3 astronauts went on the inside of the module. So essentially, the module is the same sort of thing. It's a little triangular shaped spacecraft that sits on top of an ICBM, for heaven's sake. The astronauts get on the inside of it, and they're practicing all of their drills. But the problem that they had in Apollo 1 is they're pumping the thing full of oxygen to make sure all of the systems are working. And then there was a short circuit on the inside of it. There was a small spark, which ignited all the oxygen on the inside, and then kaboom! And all 3 of those guys died in, literally like less than 20 seconds. First of all, from the oxygen and the explosion that would suck all the air out of your body, and then they've actually perished in the fire that have happened. So one of the fundamental design faults that I see here is there's no way for somebody to get out of this thing. And look, you couldn't get out of it anyway because you'd be crushed by the pressure at that depth. But if there was an opportunity for you to egress from the thing at lower depths, something 50 to 20 meters or something like that, then you want to be able to escape. There's no escape hatchel. This is literally your death capsule when you go inside of it. Very, very serious in that respect. And then when we start talking about oxygen and air and mixed gases and everything like that, there's nothing that you can see externally from the side view there or the front view there that shows me that there's additional oxygen or ways to actually get rid of those gases. And the thing that really kind of pissed me off about this OceanGate thing and the arrogance of this dude, he goes, I don't want to employ anybody in my company that is a submariner that's a 50 or a 60-year-old guy. What I want to do is I want to employ young people so we can innovate to figure out actually how to do this. And I go, okay, cool, that's a really good idea in theory, but in practice, you need people that have worked on submarines to understand how to actually do things. Because when a submarine goes to sea after it's been in port or it's launching for the first time, it goes to sea and it doesn't go under the water. Then it goes under the water by a meter, then by 2 meters, 5 meters, 10 meters, 20 meters, 100 meters. Then there's a series of things that it actually does and things that actually happen as a result of it. It is just unbelievable what's going on with this. And then when you look really closely, so he's employed no people that have worked in the submarine industry. It's a collaboration that he's had with a whole bunch of younger people to design this, to come up with fresh ideas and to do different things. But he's also, I think it was some partnership with NASA or something like that. There's bits and pieces there that I saw in the periphery. I didn't look too deeply into it because it pissed me off because of what I was seeing. And then as I'm looking, this is how they control the thing. They're controlling it with a PlayStation controller. So now it begs a series of questions. As you see, this guy's the founder and the inventor of the thing. You can see it's just a carbon fiber tube. You're just sitting on the floor on the inside of this, right? So imagine 5 people sitting in there, and you're in there for, 10 hours, 20 hours. How do you go to the bathroom, man? What happens, like, when I go down at depth, I'm getting, my body, the pressure is acting against my body as well, pushing all the gases out of my body. So what happens if I have to fart in there? What happens if I have to burp in there? There's all sorts of really bad things going on. How do I extract the CO2 from my exhaling of my breath? And how do you make sure that the oxygen is at the right level so people are not passing it? So many questions being asked in there, but when you look at the picture, it's just a solid tube in there. I mean, you can see a camera behind him, and you can see like a little thing behind him, but you can't see very much. And the guy is pointing at a PlayStation video game controller. So that's how you control the little rover. Okay, cool, I get it. That's how you control something, and that's fine. You're going to control it somehow. But he's showing, when I look closely at it, can you see any cables there, Ed? Because I sure can't. So are you using a Bluetooth controller to control a rover that goes down to 4,000 meters, and you've got 5 other people's lives in your hand? What happens if the Bluetooth didn't work for some reason? Is there a spare controller in there? Do you have a cable that you can connect to the controller to charge the controller and then to be able to do that? Like, where is your redundancy? And all of your innovation and all of the young people and all of your fresh ideas, they're all great and everything like that. But it just shows me that all of this was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. What did you think was actually going to happen? And when I think of worst case scenarios, and I've played worst case scenarios a lot in my mind. When I first joined the military, you play that all the time. These are the things that can happen. When you're on a warship in the middle of the ocean, you're essentially a missile sponge. What happens if we get collected by a missile, by an Exocet missile? The enemy Air Force fires 4 Exocets at us. We're stuffed. We're going to get hit by one of those missiles. You play that worst case scenario in your mind all the time, right? And then you go through the damage control scenarios on a ship. There's a fire, there's this, there's that. Some of the damage control exercises that I've done on warships would just boggle your mind. They're just unbelievable. The level of realism, the level of duress that they put you under is so difficult and so hard that you just hope and pray that you never have to do that for real. And I was lucky I never had to do that for real, but I do know some people that experienced it for real, where there's fires on warships and people have died and stuff like that. And it's 100 times worse than that you do in training, because no amount of training can ever prepare you for something like that. So I just think of the difficult environment that someone like this is taking a rover down to view the Titanic, for heaven's sake. It's very difficult to do something like that. So you're going to do that. So what is the worst possible case scenario? You lose communications, you get snagged on something, you lose propulsion, something happens internally medically to somebody in there. There must be 1,000 contingencies that you go through. But in my mind, all the contingencies end up in the same place. And I'm not some billionaire aerospace engineer that's building a submarine to go to the bottom of the ocean. But in my mind, they all end up in one place where I need help and I need to be rescued. So how am I going to help the people that are going to rescue me? Because in the Navy, and anyone that's ever worked on a ship knows that you can't do anything by yourself. You're always doing something with other people. And in the worst case scenario, on a ship, you have damage control parties. So if something goes wrong, you might have been on a ship before and they say, you got to go to lifeboat number 63. And you make your way there, and then there's a bunch of people there. So the staff that are there are working that area. So likewise on a warship, the staff are working the area, the front end, the middle end, or the middle or the rear of the ship. And sometimes you have to come together as parties to actually work on a problem, on a flood or a fire or something like that. But what he hasn't realized is that no matter what happens, if you need help, the only way that they're going to come and help you is with one of these, using these and these to come and rescue you. So why wouldn't you, on the external part of this submarine, create some acoustic device so you're not having to tap on the side of the carbon fiber tube to go, hey, why wouldn't you create some sort of sound reflector that went like an SOS, like pinging an SOS, like in Morse code? Or there must be, my mind boggles at the stupidity of this guy not being able to put some sort of acoustic device on there to say, hey, rescuers, here I am, and here's how I can communicate. I lost comms, but now I can use Morse code to do something, or I can use something, because I know exactly how the Coast Guard and the Navy are going to come and rescue me. Because the only way that they're going to do it is with ships, sonars, sonar buoys, planes, and helicopters. That's the only way it can be done. But here's the thing, the arrogance of this man has caused the deaths of these people. These people are not going to survive. They're not going to be recovered. It's just an unfortunate fact. But because he thinks he knows better, and I don't need anybody from the Navy or anybody that's worked on a submarine before to come and help me, he's caused this. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was always going to happen. Because anyone with half a brain in their head that ever worked on a submarine or a surface ship would say, well, wouldn't you want to put some acoustic thing on the top of your submarine, on the bottom, on the side, or some way to actually make a whole bunch of noise to go, hey, here we are. You know, you've probably, you might have seen before that if you get shipwrecked on it, you would have seen it before on some movie or some fantasy thing. You're on a shipwrecked island and the guy pulls out the flare gun and he fires the flare into the air to, here I am, here we are. In any search and rescue scenario, there's always something there to actually help you. But he didn't put anything on the outside of it. And we're listening with sonar buoys from airplanes using millions of dollars of assets trying to recover somebody for some adventurous reason. And I don't know about you, Ed, but that really kind of pisses me off. And unfortunately, I just don't think that these people are going to be recovered. What are your thoughts? There's a lot of comments there. A lot of people.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a lot to comment on, on this topic.
Stuttering John says the captain are eating the other four. Come on, man. He hasn't been in there that long.
Deep sea vehicles is not new technology. It's been around for decades. People have been making these devices. So you gotta wonder how much of the existing technology did he adopt, or did he just try to do this on the cheap and just go to the Home Depot and try to cobble one together on his own?
Yes, that's okay. And that's how it was described by a bunch of different people. There's a journalist that's been going around. I think he might be a BBC journalist. He went on there last year, and when he got down, so the fellow that was driving was some Russian dude, right? Some really super experienced dude down there, and they got snagged. They got snagged on the propeller. It was like, oh my God, we're going to die. So he tells his story. So I've got a link in the description already to the coasties, to the Coast Guard that are doing the rescue. So if you want to see exactly where it's up to, it's from a couple of hours ago. So there's a link already in the description. But if you just look on YouTube, there's a bunch of videos going around about that event from last year. So, but he does describe it the way that you're describing. It's like he went to Home Depot and got his PlayStation controller and did all of those things. It's like, man.
Okay, so you got to wonder what the sales video looked like, with these guys. Yeah, this is it, and just how he put it together, his idea for doing it. Not to make a light of the situation, but listen, I don't know. This has got to be international waters, I imagine, right, Rob? Is it?
It definitely is, yeah. So okay. It's a long way offshore, and right. the American Coast Guard are there, the Canadians are there, and when something like this goes wrong, all the resources come to bear, of course.
Well, that's right. Well, this is what I'm wondering. I mean, as far as outlawing this kind of thing, you would think that, if it were in your jurisdictional waters, you could say, listen, you're not going to go down, 5,000 plus feet without, a government approved vehicle. Something that's going to pass inspection. Maybe that's the way. Maybe their way around that was because of international waters, so we can do whatever we want and we can get away with whatever we want. I mean, I got a lot of questions here. Now, just first thing comes to mind is there really that much demand to go down and see the Titanic? When this guy's looking for a business model, is there really that big of a, and how much do you charge? It can't be cheap.
Here it is. It's $100,000 a person, right? So Jesse Back says there in the comments, and I think he sums up exactly what you're describing there, Ed. says they had radio comms on the initial one, but the CEO didn't like giving updates because he didn't want to be disturbed. So they changed it to a text-based system, which was the ping that I was talking about, right? Every couple of minutes or seconds or whatever it is, that they would send the position and the location of the actual thing. So what it says to me is, imagine if you're driving along in your little rover down at 2,000 meters, you're 2 kilometers under the ocean in the pitch dark, can't see anything, and there's people on the surface going, "Hey Rob, how you doing, man? Are you all right?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, man, I'm good." 5 minutes later, "Hey Rob, are you all right?" Like, why would that be annoying? I'd be like, can you message me every 5 minutes and just check on me, man? Because I don't know what's happening inside of here. If there's some hypoxia and I faint because of gases or whatever. But the guy is so arrogant, to your point, Ed. There's no rules or regulations because he's got so much money that he can do whatever the hell he wants. And that's why I'm saying this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, there's never one thing that just goes wrong. Never. It's like a plane crash. We've all watched air crash investigation and gone, "Oh my God, I hope that never happens to me." But there's 20 things that go wrong in the lead up to this. And the biggest thing that's gone wrong here for me is that there's no emergency communication system. On a submarine, you do one of the things that people do when they go there, and I always thought this would have been a really cool thing to do as a submariner, and I considered doing the submariner thing for a little while, but back in my day, we had Oberon class submarines, which were decommissioned, and then we moved to Collins class submarines, and there wasn't that many of them, and then they were just plagued with all sorts of problems. And I remember thinking, I could go and be a submariner and do that. That'd be a really interesting job, and it would be a hell of a lot of fun. So what do you need to do? So I looked into it, and one of the things that they do is submarine escape training. So they put you in this special suit, this pressurized suit, and then you go outside so on top of the submarine, there's a hatch. The hatch opens, and then you go, and you get shot to the surface. Yeah, and the special suit stops you getting the bends, and there's a whole series of things that actually happen there. So straight up, even when you go scuba diving, for heaven's sake, I'm going 10 meters under the water, you have a thing in your pocket, well, I did at least, called a safety sausage. Yeah, and the safety sausage comes from some incidents that happened here in Australia where people would be diving on the Barrier Reef. They get out, and for whatever reason, they never counted the people back on board, and the boats had driven away, and people were stuck in the water. So it's very hard to see somebody in a little bit of swell, right? The swell's kind of going, even just in half a meter of swell, even if you've got a pair of binoculars, you just can't see anybody because the ship's going up and down or the boat's going up and down, and you can't see them. So a safety sausage is a piece of rubber, and all you do is you put your regulator in the bottom and it goes and it fills the safety sausage up, and it goes about 2 meters into the air, and you wave it around. Hey, here I am. So why didn't they have, the emergency communication system? He could have had like a lever, an electronic lever. Press the button and it sends, it doesn't even need to have a coil. It could just have something that comes to the surface and transmit and goes SOS, SOS, help, here we are. Like, just simple little devices like that already exist. And to the comment that was made there of saying, he didn't want to have communications because he didn't want to be interrupted, just shows me the arrogance of it. Nothing is ever going to go wrong. We'll do it with a Bluetooth controller. Oh my God, man. It's an absolute tragedy.
When I was taking skydiving lessons, there was, you laugh. Yes, I
don't make jokes when I'm drinking my coffee, man. It's going to end up all over the screen in the camera. I never told you this, but I actually did take skydiving lessons in high school. Yep.
I never took the jump because I couldn't afford it, but I took the lessons, and I was hoping to come up with the money. But one of the features on the parachute back then, and I'm curious if they still have this, was some kind of a barometric device or pressure device that would indicate whether you got to 1,500 feet too quickly, right? Which means your parachute did fail, or you went unconscious and you didn't pull the thing in time. And in that event, there'd be like a little, charge that would blow the handle for you and release the parachute. Do they still have that?
Correct, yeah. So on a military parachute, it's called an AAD, an automatic activation device. So same thing, if you get kicked in the face and you're unconscious or you're spinning out of control, that does it for you.
Yeah.
And on a civilian parachute, it's called a cypress. And
Okay,
so
very
same
good.
thing, you just set the cypress on the ground before you go. It's one of the checks you actually do, and it's connected
Okay.
to your reserve parachute, not your main.
Aren't you impressed that I knew that about that?
Well, you know
Okay.
about that. You've never been skydiving. You've done that like 492 years ago, but this idiot with a submarine can't think of that. Like,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. So I would think one of the safety features I would have, the first thing I would have is I'd have some kind of, those inflatable rafts. They come and you pull the thing and it inflates. Well, I would have like a circular raft around, and so in emergency you pull the cord and the thing come out and you float to the top. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I've been silly. Maybe there's something I don't know. But at a worst case scenario, I want to say, all right, worst case, I can pull that and we'll float to the top.
There's literally 1,000 rescue devices you could have, right? So on an attack helicopter, on an old school attack helicopter like a Cobra, even on some Humvees, you might have seen some of this in Ukraine. They use a missile system called a TOW. So TOW stands for tube launched, optically guided, optically fired, and wire guided, TOW, TOW. And so a TOW missile has a range of about 4 kilometers. So this guy is down 3,000, 4,000 meters. So a TOW missile is not very big. It's actually quite small. But inside of the tube is 4 kilometers of wire. So a TOW missile, you don't even have to come up with the ideas. The ideas are already there. You could use that as the radio transmitter, and you could have the wire tethered all the way to the actual, then have communications via a radio, via a high-frequency radio, low-frequency radio. There's a series of things that you could do. There's almost no excuse for this actually happening. And, bar it being eaten by a monster down the bottom there and taken by a giant octopus or something like that, or some sort of dinosaur, man, like this was all completely avoidable, all of it.
Well, they say that we know less about the deep seas, the deep levels of our ocean than we do about, the moon. So it's hostile territory. And when when you get down to the levels, it's pitch black. You don't see anything without a powerful spotlight, to see anything. So I don't know what the hell. I mean, I'd be curious. What's the point? This guy's a billionaire and he wants to make easy money. There's got to be easier ways to make fast money than to try to.
Well, that they would say it's about exploration and pushing the boundaries. And to your point, it's if you can get down there 4,000 meters below the depths, then you're breaking new ground and you're exploring. And
that's not what this is about. This guy's going. This is a tourist event. Right? They weren't going down there to sample the ocean bottom. Besides, Tim Ballard, the guy who originally found the Titanic, they mapped that guy out. What? They just want to go down and take a look. These are just curiosity seekers. These are people who want bragging rights. These are rich people who want to say, "Yeah, I've been down there. I saw it."
Remember James Cameron did it? They made the IMAX movie, and James Cameron made that submarine or that submersible only for one person, for him. Yeah. He didn't risk anybody else. He spent gazillions of dollars doing that, went down there, made a movie about it, and did all those sorts of things. It's like, there it is. You saw it. That's kind of like, what else is there to see? Sure, it's an experience. Sure, it's an exploration. But is it worth your life? Is that sort of thing worth your life? I vote no, and I vote no because, particularly for the people that are creating these things and doing that because they got more money than they know what to do with, they're building these things to try and make more money or create notoriety and use it as the guise of exploration or some bullshit like that's already been explored, man. It's like,
well, this is going to sound really bad what I'm about to say, but I want to preface this by saying that I do hope these people are found and I do hope that they're rescued. I don't want anybody to be killed in any venture. Having said that, listen, I think for things like this, there should be some kind of a waiver that people are required to sign saying, I understand that what I'm doing is really stupid, really dangerous, and there's a high chance that I'm going to die. And so I'm going to relinquish anybody's responsibility to come and get me and spend millions of dollars and put their lives at risk to come and get me. I'm doing this on my own volition. It's my decision, and all of you, the rest of you are off the hook. They should have to sign some kind of disclaimer like that, because the money that's being spent on this rescue event, and people who, if they, God forbid, if that's go down after them, they're putting their lives at risk. If a person builds a house on a mud hill in California on stilts, and that area has a history of wildfires and floods, you build your house on stilts against that. You do it at your own risk, man. I mean, at some point, people have to be accountable for their own decisions, and they shouldn't drag all the rest of us into their nightmare. And then there's something that just plain obvious. If a guy wants to take one of those extreme, skiing trips where a helicopter takes him to the top of a mountain, he jumps off the helicopter and skis down the thing, and then he creates an avalanche. He gets buried in the avalanche. He shouldn't expect everyone else to come and dig him out. He should know
what known as playing stupid games. You'll win stupid prizes, man. It is what it is. When I got back into skydiving a couple of years ago, I said to my son Travis, "Do you want to come with me?" Because he seemed like a bit of a thrill seeker. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, all right, I'll come. Well, I'll pay for you. Let's go. Let's get our license together. We can go jumping on the weekends and do all that stuff together. Let's go." And he's like, "Yeah." And when it come down to it, I'm like, "I'm booking it for next weekend. Are you coming?" I'm actually a bit busy, Dad. And I said, "You're too busy this. Well, what make it the next weekend, or you want to do it during the week? What works for you?" "Oh, no, I'm like permanently busy." And what I did before I actually booked it, I said to him, "I'm going to send you a series of videos, and I need you to watch it, and I need you to ring me after you've watched it." And what I did is I showed him all the things that could go wrong. And because what I didn't want him to do is to take his own life into his hands, and then something happens because he was unaware of it. And it's like skydiving is inherently pretty safe, but your equipment rarely fails, but it does fail, and it can fail. And I've had a couple of malfunctions and stuff goes wrong, but I wanted him to fully understand that. And I wasn't quite sure if he had the maturity to realize that he was putting his own life at risk. So after a series of malfunctions and people crumping in and getting hurt and getting broken and crashes and all that sort of stuff, he was like, "No, I don't think I want to do that." And then a couple of weeks later, he rocks around, "Hey, I'm coming around to come and visit you." "All right, no worries, I'll see you soon." Comes around on a motorbike. I'm like, "Dude, you're more likely to get nailed on a motorbike than you are like skydiving. What's wrong with you?" And he's like, "You always told me to get a motorbike, Dad. I've got one now." I said, "Well, you're going to come skydiving?" "No, I'm not doing that." I'm like, "What the fuck?" I don't know. What do you do?
So this, I don't know. This is I got to tell you. So in my YouTube feed, when I saw these stories on this, it kind of didn't interest me a whole lot. When you think of all the people who are dying every day, horrific deaths from natural disasters or being murdered or whatever, and then these few entitled, wealthy people, they want to take a joyride on the bottom of the sea, and they expect the world to stop and come and save them. I probably sound really, really bad right now coming off of it, but
no, you don't. You're 100% right, and there's lots of people out there that think the same thing. And the reason I know that is, as I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed, I'm like, it shows there was someone put a picture of a submarine and a picture of a refugee boat that went missing just I think it was like a week ago, but 300 people missing, silence. 5 people missing in a submarine on a Titanic. The whole world is blowing up. It's like, you know what? And the other thing, to your point as well, Ed, it's an absolute tragedy that these people have perished. And I don't know if they've perished yet, but I would say to you that they have, because even if they can find them, they don't know where they are, they're not going to be able to recover them. Just don't have the gear there in time to actually get them. I could be wrong, and hopefully I'm not. But the reality is, it's over, and that it didn't have to happen. It didn't have to be this way. And the arrogance of this person who invented this, and the arrogance to think that nothing was going to go wrong, is just unbelievable. And in a cursory glance of 1 hour's worth of research, looking at pictures and knowing what I know about stuff, it just didn't have to happen. It didn't have to be this way. And to your point, Ed, it's like then all of a sudden there's millions of dollars of assets coming out to try and fix you, and then people risking their lives to try and save you. It's like, really? Should we have to? Yeah. Anyway, all life is important, I suppose, and we should do what we can to actually help these people.
Yep.
But play stupid games, man. Win stupid prizes. That's what it comes down to.
All lives are important, and I hope you give that message to the next abortion doctor you see at the grocery store.
All right, you shit stirrer. Let's take a little break, and Ed and I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. All right, let's shift gears completely into something that affects all of us, not just 5 of us and a bunch of search and rescue people. There's been an ongoing dance and debate about interest rates and inflation there in the United States. The same thing is actually happening here in Australia as well. You know, it's the Reserve Bank. These people are just the most irresponsible people in the world. You see them in their fancy suits and their fancy press conferences and their fancy everything. But you know what they really are is they're criminals. Because the people at the Reserve Bank, here, let me give you the Aussie perspective, during COVID panicked. They panicked like the world was going to end. And they're just a bunch of weak-minded pussies is the way that I describe it. I couldn't help but see the Reserve Bank governor here in Australia going, well, remember, we thought that there was going to be 1 million people that were going to die in Australia and all this was going to happen. And I'm like, Henny Penny, the sky is not falling, dude. You know, you could have just took it nice and gentle and slow and steady wins the race and do that. But instead you panicked and you printed so much money and you caused this inflation, and you're trying to do that to head off some imaginary problem that doesn't yet exist. It's like the whole thing was just in their minds. They never allowed it to develop or to play out. And as a result of that, there's been 11 consecutive interest rate rises. So they go and they print all of this money in an attempt to actually help people and to save people, but really what they're doing is helping the government, and the government just wants to be re-elected. And then they inflict this pain by destroying the economy and then creating inflation on top of it, creating interest rates. And now I saw just in the last couple of days in the UK, I think it was the UK, maybe somewhere in that part of the world in Europe, they were talking about making sure that there was 200,000 people that lost their jobs. Because if there's no more people in the economy spending money, then it takes the heat out of the economy. We don't have to raise interest rates anymore. So the powers that be, the deep state, the cabal, the banks, the government, all they do is inflict financial pain on you to solve the problems that they've created. It just boggles my mind at how incompetent these people are and how reactive they are. You know, whenever I look at something in business or just in life in general, I try and get ahead of the curve. I try and be proactive. When I set up this podcast, I set up an hour before we actually press the record button, because I'm trying to be proactive and get ahead of the things that might happen, to create the graphics, to create something as simple as a bloody podcast. But the government can't even get ahead of anything. And in the United States, man, it's even worse. What have you found? What have you discovered for us, Ed? Sorry, that's my high horse rant there. Sorry.
That's all right. Go water your horse for a second, and I'll take over for you. Okay, well, now I don't have my usual pre-recorded presentation here, because I don't think I need it. This is a topic that I'm pretty familiar with, so I'm just going to talk to you guys, naked here, just without visual help. Listen, that's the ongoing question, right? Is whether or not the Federal Reserve and the money guys are incompetent, or whether these things are done by design. And there can be arguments made for both sides there. Now, we always have to remember that the Federal Reserve is not a government organization. It's not a government. It's a private bank. And I mean, it's called the Federal Reserve Bank, right? Well, then it's not federal. It's not a bank, and they don't have any reserves. So Federal Bank Reserve is like completely misnamed.
You're going to get us canceled. Careful.
I know,
You're
right?
going right up against that electric fence.
Right? But these people have they have big money interest to answer to. So when they go in front of Congress and they give their little speech saying how we're here to look out for you, don't believe a word they're saying. They're not there to look out for you. They've got people to answer to. And now they kept interest rates at basically zero for an awful long time. It was a free money environment. A lot of people made a lot of money on that environment. A lot of people buying houses with like 2% mortgage rates out there. There were a lot of international corporations taking out loans. It was a free money environment, and that was and this is the problem with Western countries. As Vladimir Putin does have correctly, we are a debt-based society. Right. So, we live off of debt. Well,
and he rolled the dice on that by saying that we need to move economies back to commodities-based societies because you can eat commodities. You can eat wheat. You can eat soy. You can eat all of those things related to commodity. You can't eat money. You can't eat debt. And that's the fundamental difference between his philosophy and whatnot. May I just interject there because it kind of adds to what you're saying, is yesterday the Pentagon came out and said that there was another accounting error with the money that we're giving to Ukraine, and it to the tune of $6.2 billion. My God. Oops. How could you make an accounting error for $6.2 billion? So Zelensky's dancing in the street in his jumper on the red carpet somewhere in Europe with Ursula, but whatever, that how can I saw a tweet. It says in all caps, it says, "I'm never paying taxes again." Like the guy's shouting, and I'm like, what? Why is he never paying taxes again? And I looked at the video, $6.2 billion accounting error. So to your point, Ed, you say, is it by design or is it incompetence? Well, that just shows you squarely how incompetent these people actually are and how incompetent they can be.
Hold on. Go ahead. Go finish your thought.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, so when you look at 0% interest rates over an extended period of time, is it that they're incompetent and they keep them there because they don't know what else to do, or is that by design because they're keeping the economy on life support for as long as possible to get us to this point in history where we're at now, where the whole thing's about to come undone and unravel? It's a bit of both.
Well, incompetence is rewarded, right? We talk about all the time. If you want to, fail upward, work for the government. It doesn't matter how bad you are. You'll get, if you know the right people, if you're part of the club, you're all set. You don't have to worry about losing your job. They'll move you over to the State Department and give you a raise, right? So that's government work for you. There's that phrase, when someone gives an estimate on something and it's way off, and they say, it's good enough for government work. They're saying there.
I used to say that all the time.
Yeah, there's no accountability in government. When we first started sending money over, I told you this is going to happen. I told you that, and you said, no, Ed, they've got a guy, apparently they're going to account for everything. Yeah, they're going to account for everything. They never account for anything. There's a lot of people making a lot of money on this war, and they rely on these little holes. It's like those old-fashioned saloons where they'd open a saloon in a gold mining community, and the kids would go underneath the floorboard to collect the gold dust that's falling through the floorboards. Yep. So there's a lot of gold dust falling through the floors of government right now. A lot of people, that money's not lost. Trust me, someone's getting it, and someone's taking it. And there's a lot of brand new houses are being built in the suburbs around Washington D.C. Off of this.
You know what it highlights? It highlights the military industrial complex that we hear about all the time. So if you think of that amount of money, it's like $6.2 billion. And there's an accounting error like 3 months ago for $2 billion as well that they made. Don't quote me there. I can't remember exactly what that was, but it was a decent chunk of change. And so now we've had, we're approaching $10 billion worth of accounting errors. And and they go, oh, well, we're going to allocate that money anyway. It just means we've got more money than we anticipated. So let's keep spending. Let's keep doing that. But here's the catch. I saw in the redacted email earlier today. So Natalie does the email on a daily basis. And as I was just kind of listening to you there, clicking through it. So when you look at one of the screenshots that she has in there, one of the things that they do in that email, should head over to Redacted and get on that email list, folks, because it's actually really good. She has by the numbers, news by the numbers, and she's got a screenshot there, and it says $51,606, and that's how much Boeing charges the US government for trash cans that it puts inside its airplanes. So when you hear the military industrial complex and you hear about, there's a $6 billion error, what's going on? Well, not only is there mistakes happening from the government level, but the military industrial complex is gouging the government from another level. I watched a report just a couple of days ago about Stinger missiles, and they were charging something like $240,000 per missile that was fired, but in reality, the things are only worth 20 grand. They're like cheap, but they're charging like a 10x of what the thing is actually worth. It's just gouging. Here in Australia, we have a thing called NDIS, National Disability Insurance Scheme, or something like that. So if I go down to the local chemist and I've got a bit of a dodgy knee and I need a knee brace, yeah, sure, here you go, Rob. Here's the 5 different versions. This is the one that looks like the right one for you, mate. There's that one there, it's $90. If I come in and go, oh, look, I'm covered by NDIS because I'm permanently disabled or whatever criteria I meet, that same knee brace is worth like $400 suddenly. Same thing. It's just gouging, man. Gouging. So incompetence, gouging, corruption, and actual deliberate, as you say, deliberate conspiracies, deliberate plans, deliberate something. I don't know. I can't think of the word.
Well, I don't think it's that much incompetence. I think it's mostly corruption. Look, we have to pay for these secret UFO programs somehow, right? And
or you do shit tins on planes for 200 grand each.
Yeah,
I'll go down to Home Depot here or Bunnings and get you one for bloody $30 if you want.
Yeah. So there are very greedy, corrupt people out there who look to make money off of the system, and they find ways to make money off of every little angle. So every little I don't know what would you call it, every little intersection of opportunity. Opportunity, right? Yeah. They're going to say, hey, they're not paying real close attention to how much money they're spending on their Exocet missiles. I bet we could find a way to get a piece of that. These people are always finding ways to game the system, and there's never any accountability because they're all in on it. The FBI is not going to. The FBI is in on it. CIA is in on it. Boy, we're talking about touching the wire here, right? I better
go right up against that electric fence.
Okay, the government is not there to look out for us. The government is not there for us. They're not there for the people. We had this disgrace of legislation passed last year called the Inflation Reduction Act. Had nothing to do with inflation, but they used that act to fund the IRS with an additional $87 billion so that they could hire specifically another 80,000 IRS agents armed. By the way, I don't know why the hell they have to be armed. 80,000 IRS agents to audit people. They say, oh, well, it's to go after the billionaires, make sure they're paying their fair share. I got news for you. We don't have that many billionaires. We don't need an additional. It's to go after you. They're going to put the squeeze on every American in every way they can, and that's one of the reasons why they want the CBDC. They want another way to control your money. So if you're arguing with them about the money they owe you, you're not going to get a chance to argue with them. They're just going to pull it right out of your Federal Reserve FedNow account.
There's more arguing there. That's for sure. I've been. I mentioned a couple of times. I've been listening to this new audiobook called The Puppeteers. And I'm about halfway through it, and he does a really good job in the book. I can really only listen to it for about 40 minutes at a time because it's quite detailed. I actually need to buy the hard copy of it to get the actual, so you can kind of just read it and that's what he's trying to say. Because when you're listening to it, he goes a little bit too fast to cover off some of the things. But one of the methods that the Democratic Party have been using to actually fund their green projects has got to do with ESG. And the way that they do it with ESG is they enforce the laws with the SEC. Yeah, and some really smart person came up and said, look, in order for us to actually pass the legislation that we want, we need the funding. But if the Democrats are in power and the Republicans own the House, they own the purse strings, so there's no way that we can get the funding that we need to get this done. So when we talk about the dance of interest rates and inflation, and we're talking about how the Fed control this, they've put interest rates on hold for now because they're waiting for the economy to catch up and all of this bullshit, right? So you hear all of that and you think all of that is just a complete ruse. All of it is a ruse when you know about this. So let me just try and join the dots for you. I've got to go over it a couple more times before I really get it squared away in my mind. But essentially what they do is they use fines and punishment to fund the green projects that they want. So what they're doing is they're creating ESG, and ESG is being created by the BlackRocks of the world. But what government is actually doing, the gatekeepers in your state governments are the treasury departments. And the treasury departments, the people who is the treasurer of a given state, has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that they're as responsible as possible to actually get things done. And so what's happening is these people are pushing back against ESG by saying, we don't want to invest in these green projects because if I do that, that's not making any money. If the price of oil goes up, then what I need to do is to buy oil futures today when the price is low, and the price goes up, then I make money I have a fiduciary responsibility to make money on behalf of whomever I'm managing that money for, whether that's a state, that's shareholders, that's, an index fund, whatever it might be. And the state treasurers are pushing back against this ESG stuff. But the federal government are using SEC, and they're using, you guys in America have got a consumer protection agency. And they're going away and creating huge fines for these companies, and they're taking that money to fund the projects that they want to fund. So they don't have to go to Congress to get the funding released. They're using the mechanisms of fines to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars to fund the projects that they want to fund. Yep. And the whole thing, everything that you see on the front end that you're seeing there is a ruse to distract you from what they're really doing over here. And the people that are stopping it are the treasurers at the state level, which is actually a really good story, right? They're the heroes of the story and preventing it from happening. But one of the problems that they face is there's been a couple of states in America that have completely dismissed BlackRock. Get out. We've completely divested our state money from you, so we're not going to allow you to say that we have to invest into ESG projects which don't actually work. Then all of a sudden the SEC and the other consumer protection authorities come on over, and they're now fining the states. The states have to pay the money they have to pay their fines because they're not doing what they need to do, and the Fed gets to actually go and fund whatever bullshit green project they want to fund. It's like this whole thing is just a big giant circle jerk is the way to describe it. And it came from Obama. Obama started that because he owned the presidency, but the Republicans owned the House. And then when Trump came in, he got rid of it all. And the first day that Biden got back into office, he's like, nah, bring that back straight away.
Yeah, the SEC is a shakedown operation. That's what it's primarily. That's primarily
when he describes it in that book, man, he really does a good job describing how bad that actually is.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of shows ago. And I did a video on it. And the entire government, if you think about it, is a shakedown operation. They want to keep track. They want your bank to report any deposit over $600 to the IRS. Now that's in aggregate during the year. So during the year, if you deposit more than $600, they want your bank to report it to the IRS, and then it's up to you to justify where that money came from. Oh, I've been saving it up. I got it on my coin jar over the Christmas. Yeah, prove it. You have to prove that it's not income. This is what they're doing. To the point of the gentleman you mentioned earlier about, I'm not going to pay taxes anymore. I joked with you about this on a few different occasions. Listen, the modern monetary theory, which the liberals love to adopt, is that we can just print more money. What's the big deal? We'll just print more money. That is.
Well, you can't anymore. You can't print any more money. It's not working anymore.
See, that's just it. You can until you can get away with it for a while, but at some point you're going to be paying, and that's what we're coming up against. We're all going to be paying the piper, and we cannot. This is unsustainable. The money printing that we've done is unsustainable now. Something has to give. because right now we cannot afford the interest rates anymore, the interest payments on the debt that we've accumulated, and it's just going to get worse over the next like 2 months, when all the previous debt that we had issued at 1% and 2%, now we got to refinance them at 5% or 6%. It's going to blow up. I don't know why this is not getting more headline coverage.
Well, why did Jerome Powell then say, okay, no more interest rates rises for the time being?
Okay, this is the game, right? Remember, he's got Wall Street that he wants to placate, right? And this is why I predicted that they're not going to raise interest rates that much. For the Federal Reserve to fight interest rate responsibly, and they've got to get the real rate of return over interest rates, which means they really have to get it around the 9 or 10 or 12% level. We're nowhere near that. And the process of getting to that level where they have a chance of bringing inflation down to 2%, which is their target level, the market we will see a Great Depression. We'll see the market sell off like you would not believe. Okay, so this is the dance that I've been talking about, right? They painted themselves into the corner. Now the process of raising rates is to make our lives more difficult. That's a whole point behind an interest rate rising environment. They need you to stop spending money. They need you to stop taking out loans. They need you to stop. So they got to make your life more expensive to live. So that's what this is all about. They are purposely trying to impoverish you. This is by design. That's what this is. And if they're going to get a handle on control, that actually is what they should be doing, if that is their objective. But that process of getting inflation under control is the painful one. They have to, by definition, make our lives as miserable as possible to get us to stop spending money, because that's how you get inflation under control. Okay.
So he said he's not going to raise interest rates anymore. That's it for the time being. Is it miserable enough for people? Or is that the dance between
that's the dance
and Wall Street?
That's the dance, right? And now Wall Street is always a forward-looking mechanism. It doesn't care what's going on right now. It wants to try to predict what's happening 6 months from now. So even though the Federal Reserve is not lowering rates right now, they're trying to read the tea leaves. Say, well, they're starting to give us clues. Now, the Federal Reserve always they word their statements very, very carefully, because they know every word is going to be parsed by Wall Street. And so Wall Street tries to say, ooh, well, that means that they're going to pause, but they're going to stop raising rates because they think things are under control. So we think that in the third quarter, 3 quarters from now, they're going to start lowering rates. This is what Wall Street does. So this
is far in advance. You're talking about a year in advance.
Yeah. So the current news for Wall Street is old news. They're all trying to figure out. They're all trying to be the first one to figure out what the future is, and they're playing these games trying to parse the little words that come out of the Federal Reserve. And so, on the one hand, so if they were to keep money policy, loose, current or going down, we will see hyperinflation. Things will get out of control because people are going to start.
If it stays where it is that what you're saying? So
if it stays where it is, because all the damage that's been done, that's not going to do the trick. They've got to make up their mind which way they want to go. If they lower rates, that's going to create hyperinflation, because people are going to go back to their old ways of spending money, right? And that's going to lead to hyperinflation if they lower rates. And that would be the cowardly thing for them to do, is to placate Wall Street by lowering rates. Because Wall Street wants easy money, right? That's what they want. Okay, they don't want pain. They want people to keep spending the money.
If they ratchet it up another couple of notches in the next couple of quarters, is that going to solve the problem of hyperinflation? Then we end up in a place of stagflation or even deflation. We seem to be in stagflation right now. If they ratchet it up again, we're going to end up in a deflationary environment.
Well, okay. So here's the other side of the coin. So if they raise rates too much, they can easily cause a depression area scenario. So they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. Right, because of the policies that they've adopted for the past several years. Right now, they're stuck, man. They have very few options left. And plus, they're dealing with this outside force that they have really no control over, and that is the de-dollarization process that's going on worldwide.
Yeah,
where countries around the world, they're starting to stop using the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, and those dollars are starting to come back to our shores, and that's going to create inflation. So they've got that to worry about, and that was created not by the Federal Reserve so much as our government policies of bullying people. One of the policies was putting sanctions on countries for whatever reason we think of. Oh yeah, well you're in a moral country, so we're going to start confiscating all of these yachts owned by those oligarchs, and those $100 billion just sitting in U.S. bank accounts. We're going to confiscate them too. So every country around the world, they say, hold on a minute. If I get on the wrong side of the U.S. government for whatever random reason, they could take my money. So
let's decouple from that as quickly as possible, so we don't have that. Did you see on that very point, Anthony Blinken goes to China, does the right thing, kind of he didn't say anything new. He used the policy of strategic ambiguity and said that we support the one China policy. We always supported that. Nothing has changed in relation to that. But we're also going to make sure that Taiwan are armed to a point where they can actually protect themselves as well. And one day after he gets home, back to the United States, Joe Biden comes out and calls Xi Jinping a dictator. and it kind of highlights your exact point. If you get on the wrong side of him, and is that another gaffe? Maybe, could be a gaffe, but the Chinese Foreign Ministry didn't take kindly to it. And they said, his big mouth is going to get him into trouble, and it's going to cause all sorts of grief. But yeah, to your point, man, where do you see it going? Do you see interest rates staying where they are? We continuously say that these people have painted themselves into a corner and they're trying to appease everybody. And, in this scenario, not everybody's going to be happy. But is it going to stay on hold, or is it going to rise? Is it going to fall? What are you thinking?
Okay, so in order to answer that question, I've got to make a determination about how sincere I think the Federal Reserve is about actually doing their job. If they're actually sincere about doing their job, which they say they are, they say that they're focused like a laser beam on reducing inflation, getting inflation down to 2%. Well, if they are sincere, then they have to raise rates some more.
It has to go more.
Yeah. I don't think they are sincere. I think these are cowards. I do think that they're going to keep rates probably where they're at, and they're looking for an excuse to lower rates. And this is what their excuse. They're actually hoping for bad news. This is what they want. What I mean by that is, so a couple of weeks ago, news came out about the inflation rate. It came down a little bit. Listen, inflation didn't come down. Just the rate at which inflation was going up has slowed down a little bit.
They're cooking the books, man, and right. Making those numbers look good
right.
for you.
That's right. But that was good news in terms of inflation, right? Inflation is slowing down. What they want, ironically, they want bad news. They want to see something like a dramatic loss in employment, where they have a quarter where an unusually large amount of Americans lost their jobs. Okay, that's what they want, because that's what this whole process of raising rates is. They need
inflicting the pain.
Right.
You've got to look for the pain. That's the lever that they're using to determine whether they keep it or they don't. There's a theory floating around on Twitter where all the real people hang out, and all the real truth is coming out there, saying that because Joe Biden is losing control of the economy and Joe Biden is losing control of world events, the WEF and the evil Klaus Schwab and all of his cronies are rolling out their plan and accelerating the plan. Because you mentioned yesterday, I was thinking about something you said yesterday on the show, where you said that, hey, the Chinese might go after Taiwan because the window of opportunity for that is closing, because if Trump gets back there or someone else is there that's not Biden, then we're going to stop that from happening, and the Chinese are probably not going to be successful. But this is their opportunity to be as successful as possible to actually get that to happen. And so I don't think the WEF want that actually going on, and Klaus and his freaky reptilian cronies want that happening either. So that's part of the reason you see the mobilization of US military on the streets, because they're accelerating the plans to actually take back all of these things. And to your point, to create a massive, giant cyber attack. And the cyber attack is the catalyst for everything. So, conspiracy theories or not, spoiler alerts or not, I don't know. That's just what people are saying. That's not me saying that. What do I care? I live in freaking on the beach in Australia. Makes no difference to me at all. But you can't not see that out there, and you can't not hear that out there in the Twitterverse. And I see it in YouTube and that as well. I definitely see it in Telegram and a bunch of channels. And I spend a lot of time during the day looking at these things, trying to get the unspoken truth and pull back the curtain of what's really going on. And maybe some of that is there. Maybe all the mobilization you see in there in the States with the military means nothing. Maybe it's just completely nothing. It's just a beat up about nothing. And it's just people taking pictures and saying, hey, look at this. You can read your star sign in a newspaper today, whoever reads newspapers anymore, and you can make it fit into your life as well.
Yeah,
and it's likewise with all of this stuff as well. So you're going to be careful of that.
Well, listen, the government relies on disasters and catastrophes to extend their levels of powers.
Some people would say that that's all manufactured, and that's actually what they do. There's a lot of people that, if you look at the terrorist attacks that have happened over the last couple of decades, they say, "Oh, they did all of that because of." And you can join the dots to anything if you really wanted to.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we're in a spot where our default mechanism by most people is to be skeptical. So, a legitimate terrorist attack could happen, a legitimate catastrophe could happen, but people's first reaction is going to be, "Yeah, what's really going on here?"
The Ukrainians blew up their own dam, man. The Russians blew up their own gas pipeline, bro.
Right. So we're conditioned at this point not to trust our government, not to trust our media. At least I hope that. Actually, I think that should be what our default response is. We should be skeptical as a default, and then dig into it and see whether it's real or not. But most people don't do that. That's why the government can get away with what it does, and that's why this experiment that we had this past few years with the worldwide flu was so freaking successful from the point of view of certain parties.
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
Yep.
It's all about that perspective. Well, thank you so much for bringing that to light once again. Some great explanations and great definitions in there as well. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you don't just listen to this content. Do some homework yourself. See how that's going to affect you and see what that does to your life. Maybe it does nothing to your life. Maybe it doesn't affect you at all. But either way, you've got to be aware of what's going on around you, because there's second and third order effects that are happening as a result of these decisions that these evil politicians are actually perpetuating on normal people like you and me. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up for another show today. We're available as a podcast over on Twitter and Telegram. Please come and follow us on your favorite platform. Thanks for all your comments today. That was a fun conversation about that sub. Hopefully those people are recovered and found, but I really, really doubt that. So my thoughts are with their families, and as sad as avoidable as that was, it's still a very, very sad thing that's happened, and unfortunately there's not much we can do about it other than share the lessons learned from it. So that pretty much wraps it up for me. Ed, have you got any final thoughts or any closing remarks, mate?
Just God save the Queen.
God save the Queen. That's how we're going to end every show from now on. I'm going to have to pull that out and we'll play that at the end. God save the Queen. See you tomorrow, everyone. Bye, Ed.
All right, good night.